Reconvene in open session. Roll call.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Present.
Mr. Lara,
Here.
Ms. Cabral,
Present.
Mrs. Cordero,
Present.
Mr. Valencia.
Present. Item A, report from closed session. Item for closed session items A, B, and C, information was shared. Item B, introduction of interpreters. Tonight's interpreters are Cesar Ruiz and Manuel Rios Victoria. Greeting and support this evening is provided by Susana Pineda and Benji Alfaro. Just a reminder to all speakers and presenters, please be mindful when speaking at the podium not to speak too quickly so that our interpreters are able to increase accuracy and keep pace for our Spanish and Mixtec speaking audience. Item C, Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Cabral, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Ms. Cabral. Item D, recognition. We have a recognition this evening for Ms. Natalie Durbin, SBCEO 2024 Distinguished Mentor Award winner. Dr. McDuffie.
Yes, I'd like to. Good evening, Board of Education, Cabinet, and audience members. I am excited to present to you Ms. Natalie Durbin. In September, Liberty School instructional coach Natalie Durbin was named as a 2024 Distinguished Mentor by the Santa Barbara County Education Office. Natalie was one of 3 distinguished mentors honored by the county. The awardees were nominated by their peers, selected by a panel of educators, administrators, business, and community members. Natalie is awesome. I was able to meet and talk with her and greet her at the actual award ceremony, along with her husband, and your children were there as well, along with Principal Duncan. And we had they had a really great night, I think, and I did too. And it was just a good way to get to know the work that she was doing through a video that they showed. And so she is an instructional coach, and she helps teachers to improve their practices and achieve greater student engagement outcomes. She provides instructional resources and shows teachers how to implement them in the classroom successfully, in addition to working one-on-one with students. And so Natalie has worked for SMBSD since 2014, and she is a motivational mentor at her school and in the school district. Principal Cindy Duncan from Liberty School is also here tonight to say a few words about Natalie and her invaluable work on behalf of students. Cindy, if you'd like to speak, then we have a brief presentation.
Thank you, Dr. McDuffie. Greetings, members of the board and our cabinet. I'm very excited to be here tonight to honor Natalie. She truly is so deserving of this award. And I wanted to share with you a little bit of my thoughts when I first started at Liberty School 7 years ago. Right off the bat, I knew Natalie was a really strong resource for me and for the school. And she truly has a really, really big heart. And whoever she works with, whether it's staff, teachers, students, or families, she has a heart of gold, and she knows how to bring out the best in whoever she works with. She first and foremost is a very, very good listener, and she truly takes the time to sit back and figure out what are the needs of the person she is supporting, and then goes from there. And I've seen her in all different aspects of school and work, and she is one of those people you're just drawn to. And so she truly has a gift. And it's one of those things you can't teach. She has that. And we're so lucky to have her at Liberty School and as part of our Santa Maria Bonita School District. And I'm so excited and I was so pleased when I heard that she was the recipient of this award because it was very, very deserving. And I know she will continue to do wonderful things for our students and our staff during her time with us. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for her. But in the meantime, I'm very lucky to be able to work with her every single day. So congratulations, Natalie.
So Natalie, on behalf of, can you guys hear me? Yeah. On behalf of the Santa Maria Bonita School District, we celebrate you as being selected for the SBCEO Distinguished Mentor for 2024. Congratulations.
Wow, I get a plaque and everything. Okay. Um, First, I'd like to thank my family for giving me unconditional love and support that allows me to do a job that I am truly passionate about. My husband, Kenny, my son, Carter, my daughter, Colby, my parents, Barry and Jody. You guys give me more strength than you'll ever know, and I'm honored to share my life with you. I would like to thank Santa Maria Bonita School District for allowing me to be in a role that I know I am truly meant to do. Supporting teachers through not only mentoring, but also instructional coaching is some of the most important work we can do. Teachers have long, groundbreaking careers, and it is with the help of mentors and coaches that we're able to work together to continue creating magic. Thank you for supporting this work. I would like to thank my mentees, the one that I have now, Mariah, and the ones that I've had in the past. It is your enthusiasm for teaching and your fresh new ideas that continue to drive the work that I do every day. It is through your eyes that I'm able to reflect on the lessons I've learned over the past 20 years. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. I would also like to thank the mentors that I've had throughout my career. I have been truly blessed to learn from the most incredible individuals that made me feel confident, invincible, and loved. Ms. Bozina and Mr. Johnson would tell me every day, Natalie, you are the exact teacher your students need. They changed my life, and I hope I can be half the mentor that they were. So thank you again. Yeah, everyone. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
topic. If an answer to a specific question is requested, the board president will, if appropriate, direct administration to respond in writing. Do we have any comments this evening, Dr. McDuffie?
Yes, we have one comment, public comment on the agenda, on an agenda item.
Okay. So will we have that comment now or when the agenda item takes place?
We will do it at the beginning of the agenda item.
Excellent. Great. Item 9, approval of agenda as presented.
President Valencia, I'd like to.
No, I got two requests, one for public comment and one for the application. So I'd like you to make the decision. I put two requests.
Mr. Armenta, you have a request for just a public comment, and then they're both on.
People got far.
Very good. So we do have a public comment that's not on the agenda item that we'll have now, Mr. Armenta, and then we'll have public comment on the agenda item once it comes up.
All right.
Ernest Armenta, City of Santa Maria, Barbara Beck, Diana Hall, Jean Martinez, Eric Coupens, Michael Durant, James Turner, Lawrence St. John, Thomas Snedden, and Joyce Christy Schultz. These are all law enforcement district attorneys and police officers. These individuals were led by Joanne Cameron back in the 90s, that she told them on paper, Dr. McDuffie, I don't know if he shared the package with you folks, that I presented to him prior to him arriving on his first day. So my position is very simple. Is now that you guys know who Joanne Cameron was dishonest to, what action are you going to take? Yes, it's been years and decades, but how about honesty? How about some kind of standards, moral compass? Do you know right now in the halls of justice in the city police department, your word is no good? That they can't trust you? Literally. We got a police department that every time they come in contact with you, that they got to use caution. They literally have to record you folks to cover their behind. So I'm asking you, as board members, ain't you interested? I mean, didn't Dr. McDuffie share with you about Joanne Cameron? I mean, we have Mrs. Cordero and Mr. Lara were at the city council meetings when I used to go. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick, Laura, and Mrs. Cordero know the truth, but refuse to take action. Yeah, Mrs. Cordero, you know exactly what she did. And you're the board member, you're the legislative body. You're supposed to take action. You're supposed to set an example to teach the people, teach your employees, that when you lie to the police and you try to go after school employees like myself, there's a price to pay. So that's my public comment. And until you guys take action, I will continue to come like I used to, Ms. Cordero. And one way or another, you guys are going to have to take some action. My position is very simple. The sooner you can get her out of this Sousa Center, the better this Sousa Center will be. That's this dark cloud that's been over this. This is why, haven't you guys noticed? Haven't you guys ever wondered why 4 times in a row that the city of Santa Maria defeated school bond measures? 4 times in a row. Back to back, that's what we did. We, the grandparents, uncles and aunts said, no way would we ever give Rick, Laura, and Mrs. Cordero a single penny of our hard tax dollars. And we'll talk about that at the next item. And thank you, Chair, for letting me speak. And hopefully you'll take some action. Or if not, do something. Or at least tell me, hey, we're not going to do anything. Then I'll know where I stand with you folks. Well, we'll see you in a few minutes at the end of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McDuffie, you were mentioning?
Yes, for approval of the agenda, President Valencia, I'd like to request that discussion item 12A be moved before consent as our first presentation for the agenda tonight.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll second.
It is moved by Ms. Cordero and seconded by Mr. Lara to accept the agenda as amended. Roll call.
Mr. Hollinshead.
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero, Mr. Valencia.
Aye. Motion passes. So we are now on item 12, discussion item A, review tracking poll results and informing decisions on a possible 2024 general obligation bond measure.
And President Valencia, I have the public comment on the agenda item for this item. Mr. Armenta?
Is it possible to comment after, or it's your call after the presentation, or would you prefer I comment now?
So I believe the protocol is to
No.
comment now. Yes,
Yeah,
and you have
my
three
name's,
minutes.
Yeah, Chairman, my name's Ernest Armenta again, and absolutely I'm opposed to any kind of bond measure. From the beginning, back in when we defeated the school district 4 times in a row, it was because your reputation is not good right now. And that's sad for the educators and the students. That is because they're in need. Those at Benita School and those at Ontario School. But absolutely, right now, Chair, there's no way, absolutely, and I will do everything I possibly can to convince the citizens of this city not to give you a single penny, Mr. Lara. You're not deserving or entitled or even a half a cent. Your conduct and your well, I can't say I meant for all of you, but Mr. Cordero and Mr. Lara, they were at the meetings. They seen what we were saying. We don't have the funds for you right now. I believe you guys are in such a bad shape that you guys are, it's darn right embarrassing. This is what we go through, Dr. McDuffie and Chairman, God, I don't even know your name. That's how bad things are. That's how bad things are, that you know what, I bet you if you go to the market, people won't even know that you are the president and the chairman of the school board. That's how degrading this city, how bad you guys are. That's how bad this school district, no, this Sousa Center has this dark cloud that people don't even recognize you out in the streets. You don't come to our city council meetings as a regular member of the public and tell them the situation that the school's in. It's beyond embarrassing. I mean, I got a feeling you guys like it like this, that you're pleased with this. Because any board member that hears the teachers from Benita School and hears the teachers from Monteveros and all the other parents, you would think you'd be raising hell. You would think that you'd be up in roar, pounding. But I don't see it. Silence. Just there. Embarrassing, degrading. But you know what? It's a sad comment that I have to say that I won't give the school district a single penny, but it's because of them. And I want you educators to know that it's all because of them. That's why we, the public, voted 4 times in a row to send the school district on their way and not give them a single penny. Thank you.
All right, we are back to the discussion item. I'll repeat the item. Item A, review tracking poll results and informing decisions on a possible 2024 general obligation bond measure. Mr. Beecher.
Thank you very much, President Lara. Why do I have Lara on the brain? Your name came up a couple times recently, Mr. Lara, so I apologize. President Valencia, I do know your name very clearly. I don't know how that happened, but it does. So my apologies. President Valencia, thank you very much for advancing us to the beginning of the agenda, school board for supporting that so that we can get Dr. McLarney on the road after he shares with us some really important information. But I don't want it to seem like what he shares is like a single event. There are a lot of things that have been happening in the school district leading up to tonight, leading up to bringing Dr. McLarney in to help us with this decision. about the viability of a potential bond measure in November of 2024. And so and it's a lot. And so I've created some notes to make sure that I get a chance to lay it out for the school board so that you know the journey, and you've been a part of it all along, but I want to make sure and walk through some of the events that have led us here. But before I do start, as I think about work like this, it's not stuff that is completed by any single person. There are a lot of folks that contribute to a big effort like this. And so I want to give some thanks to people who have been supporting us to get here. We have a core team of folks that are involved in a lot of these decisions, Dr. McDuffie and myself. So thank you, Dr. McDuffie, Tammy Castillo-Schiffer, Dr. Schiffer, Dr. Humphrey, and Brian Rickey are a part of that team. I thank them. Our discussions and debates lead to the best results possible. As we've got a lot of perspectives in the room as we move forward. We have partners at Clifford Moss. We've talked about them a bit. Bonnie Moss, Laura Crotty, Gabe Ortega, really wise advisors that have a lot of experience in communications. We're happy to have them on our team. You've met Lori Ranieri and Keith Weaver from Government Financial Services, JPA. They're going to be providing us great financial advice as we move forward. And then, of course, Dr. McLarney and his team returning to the Santa Maria Bonita School District. You may remember he provided us great advice as we pursued the 2014 Measure T ballot measure that passed with the 62% support of the voters. Tonight, the information you'll hear from Dr. McLarney is a really sophisticated way to hear relevant, statistically relevant information about the community of Santa Maria. In particular, the Santa Maria Bonita School District community. And so I want to make sure that we kind of recognize the ways that we've been listening to the community as we've taken this journey. We involved many people in the development of the school district's strategic plan, parents, students, teachers, our labor partners, community members, educators in surrounding districts. That plan created our mission statement, which is to ensure every student flourishes by discovering their passion, purpose, while exercising self-determination and developing the skills to reach their maximum potential through a student-centered culture. There's a lot to it that leads into that statement, but that's essentially the purpose. That same group also built the parameters, the guidelines to how we pursue that mission, and I want to read them because they're important. We will make decisions based on what is best for students. We will welcome all people with dignity and respect. We will practice responsible stewardship of our resources. We will embrace, practice, and model integrity. And we will not compromise our commitment to excellence. When we have our core team meetings, we always start by tying in to the strategic plan. The communications that we're setting up, the ways that we're approaching our work, all tie back to the strategic plan. And that's why I wanted to make sure and just reiterate some of those important statements for you tonight. We also invested deeply in gathering community input related to the building the facility master plan. A general obligation bond, a ballot measure, is an option for financing the investments that are listed in that facility master plan, the projects that are in there. We had 5 community meetings for parents to join in with their site principals and our designers to think about options at school sites. Our designers met with every principal and walked every campus with them. We had experts inventorying and analyzing our facilities to make sure they understood what equipment was in place, the condition of our facilities as they built out the maintenance strategies that are in the facility master plan. And a steering committee made up of, again, teachers, students, site principals, community members, then took all of that data and helped shape that final facility master plan. I just want to reiterate, one of our core strategies in the strategic plan is to provide structures and facilities to support inclusive learning experiences. So as we frame the work of our choice tonight, the pursuit of our strategic plan and the strategies in there, we want to keep those things in mind as well. We did have a successful bond measure, as I mentioned earlier, in 2014, but our facility needs continue, and they continue to grow. Since 2014, the district has increased by 1,000 students, over half of which are transitional kindergarten students. And at the same time, we've reduced class size averages. So in spite of that growth, we're trying and working to keep pace to manage that workload. We've added 26 new junior high classrooms. We built Jimenez Elementary and Libin Elementary, and expanded several other elementary campuses to add 125 TK through 6 classrooms, 55 of which were portables and 96 were permanent classrooms. That's a lot, right? That's a lot of work. And yet we're still very crowded in our classrooms and we still have work to do. In addition, we've increased our practices to be more inclusive of our students with disabilities. We've added air conditioning to Robert Bruce School. We plan to add air conditioning in the near future to the remaining schools. We've replaced playground equipment with shaded inclusive structures, 5 campuses over summer last year, with 7 more scheduled for the summer of 2024. So there's a lot happening that we're doing, investing our own funds, and we're investigating the option, the viability of a potential ballot measure in November 2024. None of those decisions have been made as far as whether to do that or not. Tonight's meeting is another meeting to provide evidence to the board, detailed data about the potential for a ballot measure. Dr. McLarney and his team have used a very sophisticated process, asking simple questions, but to get really valuable, actionable information for us. Again, reiterating, no decisions have been made. Tonight is not a meeting where the board is going to be asked to decide whether we put a ballot measure on the November 2024 ballot. What we're looking for tonight is an understanding of the viability and then essentially direction to continue to investigate that viability. So with all of that, to let you know what the journey has been so far, I'm really excited to bring Dr. McLarney to the microphone, have him share with you the results of his work, so that you have a very good understanding of what it means out there, what our voters think about a ballot measure in 2024. Dr. McLarney?
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. McDuffie. I'm Tim McLarney, president of True North Research. We are a firm that over the last 20 years has specialized in working with school districts and other types of public agencies in using surveys to develop a statistically reliable understanding of the communities and the customers that they serve. To date, my business partner and I, working as a 2-person team, have designed and conducted over 1,300 research studies for public agencies. And about half of the research that we're doing these days is what we call revenue measure feasibility studies, like what we're going to be talking about here tonight, where the goal is to understand if it's feasible for an agency to move forward with some type of revenue measure. And if it is feasible, to help them understand how they might go about structuring that measure in a way that it's consistent with the type of measure that their community is interested in supporting. Matt mentioned that we had the privilege of working with the district on Measure T back in 2014. We've also worked on hundreds of other measures around the state. And to date, I'm happy to say we've had the most successful track record in the state when it comes to bonds or tax measures that we recommend go to ballot based on the research ultimately being approved by voters. That's 95%. To date, we've helped raise about $35 billion in voter approved measures around the state. I mention that in part because as I go through tonight's presentation, I may make reference to how the results we're seeing in your district compare to what we might normally see in other districts. And I just want to leave you with some understanding of the experience base from which I'd be speaking. And I also welcome questions from the board as I go or at the end, whichever is your preference. Okay. So before we talk about the actual results, it's helpful to take a moment to review the purpose of the study, as well as the methodology. In terms of the purpose of the study, we're trying to really address three things with a revenue measure survey. The first is to answer that basic question of, is it feasible? And what I mean by that is if you as a board were to choose to take the action of placing a measure on the November ballot, does it have a reasonable chance of success? Answer to that question isn't always yes. Sometimes when we do this type of research, no matter how you look at the data, there's really no path to get you from where you are today to where you need to be viable on election day. And if that's the case, I'll be the first person to tell you that, right? I think the last thing that you as a board would want, or the administration would want, or the community wants is to invest in a process where you really don't have a reasonable chance of success. When we do see that it's feasible, that second bullet comes into play, which is how do you go about structuring a measure in a way that is consistent with the type of measure that your community is interested in supporting? There's a lot of components to a bond package, that there's the price tag. So what's it going to cost? How much is it going to raise in terms of funding for your schools? How would you propose to spend the money if it's successful? What election dates are you going to put it on? What sort of accountability provisions are built into the measure to ensure voters that their tax dollars are going to be well spent? So there's a lot of elements that ultimately you as a board would have to make some decisions about, and structure this measure before you put it on the ballot. The survey can help guide that. And then lastly, that third bullet there, about communications and information, the survey is really an important way to gauge the importance of information in shaping voters' opinions about your proposal. I'm a big believer that if a public agency is going to take the step of placing a measure on the ballot and asking voters to make a decision, it's really incumbent upon you as a public agency to inform voters about the decision you're asking them to make. You're not advocating as a public agency up or down. You're not saying vote yes or vote no with public dollars. But what you can do is provide voters with the basic information, right? Why is it that the district is looking at a potential bond measure? What types of projects would be funded, et cetera. And so they just have the information they need to, on their own, come up with their own decision and a well-informed decision at that. So that's what we're trying to do in terms of the purpose. In terms of the methodology, we use an approach that we always use when we're working with revenue measures. The first thing you want to ask yourself when you're thinking about a revenue measure is, what election are we considering placing this measure on? Different elections have different turnouts. And as your turnout changes from either being high or medium or low turnout, the profile of voters who actually participate and the profile of the electorate changes. And so in this case, we're thinking about November 2024. And so we identified what we call likely November voters. These are voters who, based on when they register to vote in the district, what elections they've taken advantage of since that point, as well as some other demographics. These are individuals that we expect to actually cast a ballot in the upcoming November election. We use then what's called a process called stratified and clustered random sampling. I can get into the details of that if you like, but suffice to say, what it ensures is that at the end of our data collection process, we have a sample of likely November voters that matches the universe of likely November voters on all of the variables that we know drive how voters behave when it comes to bond measures. So things like age, gender, partisanship, household party type. That's the single best predictor. If I know somebody is a certain partisan, that tells me something about it. If I know the partisanship of the people they live with, it actually tells me a lot more, right? And what you tend to find is that that single variable is the best correlate to what you find in terms of how people tend to vote on these bond measures. So we ensure that our sample matches that universe of likely voters on all of those characteristics. Once we've done that, we reached out to recruit to participate using 3 different methods: email, text, and telephone. The email and the text invitations are PIN protected. What I mean by that is there's a hyperlink that they can click to come in. Each one of those hyperlinks is unique to that individual, and that ensures that only those individuals that we invited to take the survey based on a random sample can do so. They can take it one time only, and they have the option, though, of participating either online or by telephone, as well as in English or Spanish. And we completed 411 interviews, which randomly selected gives us a margin of error of plus or minus 4.8% at the 95% confidence level. What that means is we can be 95% confident that the results that we'll be sharing today are within 4.8% of what we would have found had we spoken with all of your likely November voters in the district. Okay, so now that we've covered the methodology as well as the purpose, we'll dive into the results. This first slide shows the results of what we call our importance of issues question. For each of the issues you see on that slide, we simply ask voters to tell us, how important is this to you? Is it extremely important, very important, somewhat important, or not at all important? We asked this in a random order, but they are sorted from high to low here based on that combined percentage of folks who said it's either extremely or very important. We asked this question for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's just a nice warm-up question, kind of gets people into the groove of taking the survey, gets them thinking about local issues, but it is also an opportunity for us to understand how education as a topic stacks up against some of these other topics that also compete for tax dollars. And in particular, how does the issue of improving the quality of education in local schools stack up against the issue of preventing local tax increases? Rough rule of thumb, but the bigger the gap there, right? The more importance they place on education relative to this issue of preventing local tax increases, the better positioned you are to move forward with some type of revenue measure related education. And what we see here is that tied at the top, the two top issues there were reducing crime and gang activity, as well as improving the quality of education in local schools. Those had 93% and 92% respectively say it's either extremely or very important. As you look down the list, you go all the way to the bottom there, you have preventing local tax increases at 67%. So we've got a gap here of about 25, 26% between the two topics I mentioned, the education topic and preventing local tax increases. That's a good size gap. That's a little larger than what we've been seeing in most districts over the last couple of years. And so that's a good thing. The other thing I will point out is if you look at that issue of repairing and upgrading aging school facilities, that checks in at 75%. So quite a bit lower than the issue of improving the quality of education in public schools, still higher than preventing local tax increases. I point that out because not that it's an unusual pattern, it's a pattern we always see, but it's a healthy reminder that although bonds are about facilities, right? They're about making improvements and repairs and constructing new facilities. Ultimately, when it comes to education, voters aren't as concerned about your facilities as they are about what happens inside those facilities, right? So you always want to be connecting the dots between what it is you're going to be building or improving with your bond, but why it matters to your core mission of educating students. Okay, so after the importance of issues question, we get right down to business with our initial ballot test. And the idea here is
And
before
would
we
you
get...
mind slowing down a little bit for our
I
interpreter
will
team?
try. I will tell you, I usually speak about 3 times as fast, and so I'm trying to slow down.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best.
Oh, they just need a little bit. Is it just to switch? Okay, so pacing wise, is he doing okay? Great. Yeah, so
Okay.
just the switch. And you're doing fine.
This car only goes so slow. Um, so the idea behind the initial ballot test is before we get any deeper into this interview and we start talking in more detail about possible tax rates that could be associated with the bond, various projects that you're planning to fund, or arguments pro and con, we want to present to voters a mock-up of what we think that 75-word ballot statement could look like. It's a really good gauge, the initial ballot test is, of where your voters are at on the natural with respect to this proposal. So this is the language that we tested. And here are the results. So at that initial ballot test, you had 68% of respondents say that they would support this proposal, 22% opposed, about 10% were unsure or preferred not to answer the question. So in the state of California, for a Prop 39 bond, you need 55% support to be successful. So right out of the gates at the initial ballot test, we're sitting 13 points north of that 55%. That obviously is a very good place to start. Now, after the initial ballot test, we get into the tax threshold section. The idea here is that, naturally voter support for a measure can depend on the price tag. The more it's going to cost them from a tax rate perspective, all other things being equal, the lower the level of support you can usually expect to get. And so what we want to do here in the tax threshold section is, number one, make it really clear that bonds mean taxes. We're being transparent about that. Number two, we're presenting to voters a series of possible tax rates that could be associated with the measure to understand how, as you alter that tax rate, that might alter their support for the proposal. And we also talk about the tax implications of the bond in a couple of different ways. So this first slide here shows where we tested 3 different possible tax rates: $30 per 100,000 of assessed valuation, $24 and $19. And we always go high to low. That's called a Dutch auction. You start high, you go low. They don't know what's coming next. That is the best way to figure out when somebody is willing to sort of jump in with the yes vote. If you start at the bottom and go up, it doesn't work, right? Once I've offered something to you for $19, you're not going to pay 30. So you start at the high and you go low. And what you see here is that when you kind of focus voters' attention on the price tag, it does cool your support down, right? At $30 per 100,000 of assessed, we had 52% support. At $24, it was 54. At $19 per 100,000, it checks in at 57%. We know that this is a conservative read on voter support for a bond measure for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're putting the blinders on the respondent, right? We're focusing their attention on the price tag, separating it out from that bond package where all the goodies are. Like, what are we going to get for this, right? What are the benefits of this? We're sort of setting this benefits aside and we're just focusing them on the price tag. When you do that, it tends to have a cooling effect. The other reason why we know this question in particular is it gives you a conservative read on support for a proposal is because when we say, if you knew that the property taxes on your home would increase $30 per 100,000 of assessed valuation, not everybody knows what that means, right? You need to know what assessed valuation means. You need to have some estimate of what the AV is for your residential property. You've got to be able to do math pretty quickly in your head in the space of an interview to come up with a meaningful number. Not everybody's good at that, understandably. And so there's a certain percentage of voters who we know are hedging, right? They know you're talking about price tag. They don't know quite what it means. And so they'll tend to default to a no or a not sure as opposed to a yes. And so that's why we also come about it a different way. We say, all right, let me put it another way. And this is the left column. If you knew that this measure would cost the typical homeowner about $92 per year, would you vote yes or no? The $92 per year is the $30 per 100,000 of assessed valuation tax rate multiplied by the median AV for a residential property in your district. So it's what that middle property owner would pay. And what you see is when you do the math for voters and you help them understand what the price tag kind of looks like, you get a more positive response. So at the $30 per 100,000 of assessed valuation tax rate, we had 52% support. When you do the math and say that's $92 a year, support jumps to 61%. Same exercise on the right, only here we're annualizing that $19 per 100,000 assessed valuation tax rate that annualizes to $58 per year for the median homeowner. And at that price tag, we had 67% support. So the point here is that when voters understand kind of the true price tag, the true range of costs that you're considering and what this bond would cost them, you have support that's in the anywhere from 61% to 67%, depending on what that annualized cost is. Okay. So after the tax threshold section, we get to the projects and improvements section. And the idea here is twofold. One is we're now going to start to educate this respondent more about what this bond measure would accomplish. Up until this point, they'd only seen that 75-word initial ballot test, and you can only say so much in 75 words about what a bond is going to do. Here we get to unpack your bond proposal into all these discrete project areas. And in that way, we're giving the respondent a better idea about what you're planning to do with these funds if it's successful. The other thing it allows us to do is to understand of all the ways you're thinking about spending the money, how do voters feel about those projects, and which of these sort of rise to the top of the list in terms of priorities. So a couple things jump out to me as somebody who does this a lot for a lot of districts. Number one, the strength of the response to these projects is larger than we normally see. It's not common to have strongly favor be in the 60% range, and you have quite a few projects where that's the case. And when you look down all but I think the bottom two projects, you have 8 and 10 respondents saying that they would favor spending some of the money on that project. So everything you're thinking about doing with the bond is popular, right? They see the need for those projects. As an aside, I have yet to crack the TK riddle, which is how you talk about TK, where people understand it and why it means you need facilities. It's at the very bottom of the list here. That's the best I've ever seen it test, but it's at the bottom of the list. And every time I test this in other districts, it's at the bottom of the list. So it's still a mystery. If I ever solve that riddle, I'll come back and let you know how to talk about TK in a way that folks understand it. But bottom line is when you look sort of towards the top of the list, there's kind of your top 5 or so projects. They are focused really on fixing your old facilities, right? So upgrading older schools so they meet current health codes, building safety codes, proper ADA access, right? Things like repairing, replacing, deteriorating roofs, plumbing, electrical. So the top 3 of the top 5 are focused on that. And then the other 2 are sort of talking about classrooms in terms of teaching core subjects like reading, writing, and language, as well as STEM. So this combination of things we see a lot, which is when the voters are interested in a bond, it's partly about bringing your older facilities up to new school standards. And it's often, to the extent that you can talk about that the facilities you're improving are STEM related facilities, or in your case, teaching core subjects like, reading and writing and language, you get a strong response to those. And we're seeing that pattern here as well. So after the projects and improvements section, we get into the argument section of the poll. And the idea here is if you as a board choose to move forward with a November measure, there's going to be an election cycle. There's going to be a lot of discussion and debate in the community about your proposal. You'll undoubtedly have advocates of this measure stand up and talk to their neighbors and friends about why this is needed and why they should vote yes. You might also have opposition. People step up, say it's a terrible idea, we shouldn't be doing it, and here's why. For this survey to be a reliable gauge of the feasibility of a bond measure, we need to know not only where your voters are at today, which was that initial ballot test, but what happens or what is likely to happen once they're exposed to that discussion and debate that's going to occur during the election cycle. So we do that by presenting both positive and negative arguments. Shown here is sort of the top tier. I just broke the graphic in half because it's easier to read when there's half of a graphic. Then the font gets pretty small when it's all on one. But you can see here that we've got a lot of projects here that resonate with your voters, or I'm sorry, arguments that resonate with your voters in a positive way. And I think everything on this list, you had, better than 3/4 of respondents say that, this argument is at least a somewhat convincing reason to support the measure. The number one had to do kind of with the crowding issues you have. So several of the schools were built for 600 students, have about 1,000 students today, and our population continues to grow. We need to add classrooms and school facilities to keep up with growth and reduce overcrowding. So that was your number one positive argument on behalf of the bond. But you can see here, there are a number that resonate. Here's sort of the second tier. So at this point in the survey, a respondent has heard more about this proposal than they did initially. We had a chance to talk in detail about the tax rates, right? That's a big wet blanket on support for the proposal, but we had a chance to come back, talk in more detail about the projects could be funded. We conveyed positive arguments. And so we circle back with what we call the interim ballot test. We present that same 75-word ballot statement. We say, now that you've heard a bit more, where do you stand? And what you see, the results of the interim ballot test are here. It looks really stable, right? We started at 68%. We've landed at 69%. So that's 1 point higher. In reality, it's a little bit of a roller coaster, right? We started at 68. We talked in detail about the tax rates. That kind of cooled things down. But once they learn more about the projects you're going to fund, they've heard positive arguments, they climb back up and actually go past 68 to 69%. So you're sitting at this point about 14 points north of that 55% threshold you need to be successful on election day. And then we get to the negatives. And the idea behind the negatives is I'm going to pepper respondents with a series of negative arguments, the kind of negative arguments we would expect to hear from an opponent. And the reason for this is I want to sort of pressure test support for your proposal. How resilient is your yes vote? Should you get opposition? Should they be active and vocal? And so you see here the negative arguments we tested. We tested fewer negatives than we do positives. That's by design. What you tend to find when it comes to school bond elections is the advocacy group tends to be much larger in number. They're more organized. They raise money. They do direct mail, right? They have a louder voice than the opposition. And so we simulate that disparity by testing fewer negatives, but the negatives we're testing are designed to be hard-hitting negatives, right? We're not pulling any punches. We're trying to give voters good reasons to vote no here to see kind of what happens. And so we test a series of negative arguments. You can see some of these negatives get some traction. The real question, though, is what happens afterwards, right? After they've heard the negatives. And that is here. So after the negatives, those arguments cool support down about 6 points from where we were at the interim ballot test, but we're still landing at 63% support. So that's still 8 points north of the 55% threshold you need to be successful for a Prop 39 bond. Okay, so a couple wrap-up slides here. So what does all this mean? I'm going to circle back first to that overarching question I mentioned at the outset as to one of the main motivators for why you do this research, which is to answer that basic question of, is it feasible? If you as a board were to choose to move forward with a November 2024 bond, does it have a reasonable chance of success? The answer to that, based on these numbers, is clearly yes. There's a lot of positive things and the things we want to see in place for a measure to have a good chance of success, we see in place here. And that's listed under the positive signs. Recall that we saw improving the quality of education in local schools was among the top 2 issues for your voters, and it was viewed as much more important than this issue of preventing local tax increases. That translated to strong natural support for the bond measure. With just the 75 word ballot statement, no additional information, we had 68% of respondents tell us they would support this. The projects and improvements that we're testing, those were all popular. The positive arguments resonated. And importantly, at each point in the interview, when we came back to a respondent, we said, all right, now that you've heard more about this proposal, where do you stand? Every one of those ballot tests was well above 55%. And that's even after opposition arguments. And so, do these results say you got a reasonable chance of success in November? Yes. I think these numbers are among the better numbers that I've been seeing this cycle in a lot of districts. And so I think you've got a good chance of being successful. Now, that said, there's also some challenges that pop out of the research that you're going to want to be mindful of. One, we did see some tax rate sensitivity, right? So particularly when talked about as a rate that many voters don't quite understand, and it was easier to digest when it was in terms of a total dollar for the typical homeowner. And so we saw that. We did see some receptivity to the potential opposition arguments, right? Those cooled us down about 6 points between the interim and final ballot test. One other thing that I didn't call out on the graphics here, but when you sort of break your voter groups down and you look at high propensity voters, so like the kind of voter that's not only going to show up in November, they're going to show up in like the March primary where the turnout's lower. These high propensity voters, they see your measure a little differently, right? They're generally less supportive of this to the tune of about 9 points. And so when you think about the November turnout, it's sort of like layers in an onion. The core of that onion is your sort of high propensity, say, primary voter. Wrapped around that is a group of voters who they're probably not going to participate in the primary, but they're going to show up in November. And so turnout matters for your proposal. And it's going to be important that those, what I would call low propensity voters, the folks that, don't show up in March, but do show up in November, that they understand that your measure's on the ballot, and to vote down ballot is going to be a large ballot. There's going to be a lot of measures on that ballot. And so these results here reflect, that whole onion, so to speak, of voters voting down ballot on your measure. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then finally, we do know that, when you think about 2024, it's going to be a hyper partisan election. I think the last few have set the bar pretty high. This one's going to set it even higher, would be my guess. And it's going to be a little bit of a wild ride. I mean, so every once in a while you get elections where everything's sort of good. Everyone thinks it's blue skies and tailwinds all the way to election day. This is not going to be one of those types of elections. It's going to be a little more volatile. It's going to be a little more turbulent. And I mention that because you always want to keep that in mind when you're putting a measure on the ballot of, okay, we can't just assume it's going to be the optimal conditions for this. We've got to expect we're going to get some headwinds, right, on one form or another, and factor that in terms of the type of measure that you put in front of voters and the level of work you put into that. So with that in mind, couple observations and recommendations. One thing I want to emphasize here is, a poll like this is a snapshot in time, right? It's not a crystal ball looking forward to election day and saying on election day, you're going to get 68%. What it says is, here's where we are today, which is 68%. Here's how voters tend to respond to the types of information we would expect them to encounter during the election cycle. But ultimately, what determines what happens on election day isn't what your poll says today. It's everything that happens from this point forward. And I mention that because it's kind of a reminder that we got to make smart decisions about how you structure your measure so that you're putting in front of voters the type of measure that they've told you they're interested in supporting in terms of reflecting their priorities, reflecting their tax rate sensitivity, et cetera. And you got to put the work in terms of community outreach and engagement. And so with that in mind, couple thoughts in terms of project priorities. Obviously, everything that we tested was popular. But if you look at this list, this is sort of the cream of the crop, right? These are the things that came to the very top of the list that your voters care about. Your bond project list should sort of emphasize those. That way, when voters look at this, they connect the dots between, okay, I care about these things and I'm seeing these types of projects in this bond. And ultimately, a poll like this isn't the end of the conversation. Usually it's somewhere around the beginning of the conversation. Now that you've got a viable measure, it's really time to now continue this conversation with the community in terms of engaging them, helping raise awareness of your facility needs in the community, answer their questions they may have about this proposal, and ultimately start to build consensus around a specific proposal that if you're inclined to put one on the ballot, it's well informed by this community discussion. Ultimately, there would also need to be an independent campaign. This is not district funded. It's not, staff on company time. What it is volunteers privately funded. But once you as a board choose to place a measure on the ballot, there's an election cycle and there needs to be a positive campaign that could kind of carry the ball forward through that election cycle and make sure that there's a voice for this measure during that period of time when, as a district, once you've voted to place it on the ballot, your role in communicating for the most part is done. So that is the end of my presentation. I welcome questions from the board if there are any.
Are there any further questions or comments from the board? Ms. Cordero?
This isn't a direct comment regarding the presentation, which seemed very thorough to me. My question has to do with identifying homeowners that actually occupy their homes. And is there a way to do that so that our outreach can be very directed?
The short answer is yes. Now, the voter file itself does not have a field for whether you're a homeowner or not, the one that comes from the county. However, the enhanced versions that we work with, where you've cross-referenced the assessor's file against the voter file, you can pick up homeownership that way. And in my experience, the flag within our enhanced version is about 90% correct. So we do have data on, at least in our survey, in terms of who's a homeowner, registered a homeowner, who is not. It gets a little tricky sometimes with your trusts. There's a lot of, it's a little sometimes hard to look into a trust and understand is this trust, is the person who's actually registered to vote at that address, are they the owner and it's in a trust, or is it, that kind of thing? But so that's why it's a little fuzzy. But the short answer is, yeah, there are ways of doing it.
Would that be worth pursuing? Or
we tend to, what you tend to find is, number one, homeowners are usually a little overrepresented among your likely voter base, right? If you look at renters and owners tend to vote at a higher rate than do renters. So they're already naturally part of that. Normally, when you think about district communications, though, you're not so targeted. You're thinking about, we just want to move beyond the parent base, which districts tend to do a good job of communicating with. But now you want to be thinking of sort of all voters, right? Many of whom don't have kids in your school district currently. And they often maybe not as informed about what your facility needs are. So it's not so much targeting homeowners as it is getting the message out to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Just one question regarding the threshold of the feasibility. Do you guys have experience when there are either positive or negative, when there are districts within a city that are trying to pass bonds for facilities at the same time?
Yep.
Which is likely?
Yeah. So, very common, particularly when you're looking at presidential general elections like we're seeing now. And the rules of a Prop 39 bond are that you have to put them on these regularly scheduled elections. It used to be back in the day before Prop 39, everyone could do special elections, low turnout. It's kind of your own affair. That doesn't happen now. And so, lots of times you have cases where if you're not unified, you have a feeder district or two considering a bond as well as the high school district. I've also been in cases where you've got feeder districts, high school district, community college district over the top. It's pretty common. That dynamic can be sometimes positive, sometimes negative, and sometimes it's sort of indifferent. The positive sides are if you are both ultimately going, let's say it's the high school district and a feeder district, it's just two agencies getting that message out there about, the importance of education, how facilities connect to their core mission of educating students. And so you've got sort of multiple voices singing the same tune, so to speak. And that can help sort of saturate the message. So that can be a positive, right? Obviously, the negative side is the more measures you have on a ballot that are tax measures, to some degree, you can get some fatigue, right? That, okay, I'm not going to vote for all of these. I'm just going to vote for some of them and they make some decisions. So it's common that's there. I would say, you have the kind of numbers that if you do what you're supposed to do, right? If you do a good job on your end, if there's an overlapping high school bond, I don't see that derailing you, right? What tends to derail these measures is two things. One, people get greedy sometimes, right? So they might look at it and say, let's say, for unified school districts, you can go up to $60 tax rate. And they got solid numbers at $40 and they decide, you know what, we're going to go for 60 because our numbers look good. Voters, weren't talking about a $60 tax rate. They're talking about a $40 tax rate when they said that they were willing to support at this level. So sometimes that happens. The other thing, the bigger sort of concern is you get lazy, right? That, hey, our numbers look good. I think we've got this in the bag. Let's put it on the ballot. Don't really engage much in communication and outreach. You kind of have an anemic campaign, and then all of a sudden on election day, you're not ready to deal with some of the things that can happen during an election cycle, and you lose. I like to when I'm not cavalier about recommending that clients go to ballot. This is part of the reason why we have a 95% success rate, because if you're not ready, I'm going to tell you you're not ready. These are the kind of numbers that I think if you do a good job on your end, you should be successful, regardless if the high school district is going to put a measure on the ballot.
A question that I have is something you had mentioned that I could use some clarity around is what is the role of board members? I think you had alluded to earlier about not being able to advocate, yes or no, but a big piece of that is the education. So what role do we play in that process?
So I'm not an attorney, and you're going to have a bond counsel as part of this process, and they're going to be able to come in and sort of give you the do's and don'ts, right? And be specific about that. I've been in this long enough and I've heard their speeches enough times that, board members are a little different. The basic rule is this: if you're on the district dime, you're working for district, you're using district resources. You cannot be advocating up or down for that, right? Staff on their own time, right, and using their own resources are free to, campaign either way they want, right? Same thing with a board, right? Board, you have some latitude as elected officials. The main issue is, you don't want to, not that phone banking is really all that common anymore, but you don't want to do phone banks out of, the district's offices or things like that, because you're actually using public resources for this, what should be a private campaign. But the bond council is the one who can come in and kind of talk about this process, talk about roles, talk about what you can do and what you shouldn't do. They're the person to listen to.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments from the board? With no further questions, the Board of Education directs staff to continue to investigate the potential for a general bond obligation as presented. I would also like to take a 5-minute recess before we continue with our work. All right, we are now reconvening our board meeting. Item 10, consent items. Actions proposed for the consent agenda are consistent with adopted policies and approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. They will be acted upon by roll call vote in one motion without discussion unless a member of the board requests an item be pulled from the consent agenda for further discussion. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be voted on separately. May I have a motion to approve the consent items as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items as presented.
And I'll second.
It is moved by Mr. Lara and seconded by Ms. Cabral to approve the consent items as presented. Roll call.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 11, action items. And the item is A, 2022-2023 audit report for the Santa Maria Bonita School District. Dr. McDuffie.
President Valencia, we do have a public comment on this agenda item.
Okay.
Mr. Armenta.
Yes.
This is what I do. Okay, Chairman Valencia, this is what I do. Those that know me know that I speak on all items. But I make a simple request that maybe Chairman Valencia, if the board secretary can make a binder package of all that the board has for the public to review. See, I don't see anything, I would like to read exactly what you guys are reading. So I'm requesting that the secretary at some time in the future provide a package, a full package binder for members of the public should be able to read exactly what you're reading. Because all you're doing is right here is an audit and then I hear the presentation, but I don't get to review it myself. With a packet, I think it'd be more transparent. You bring it more to the public and then you have more of us participating and then we'll be able to read it. So the request is if you could have the board's secretary provide a packet, a binder with everything that you guys have for the public to review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Dr. McDuffie, or does it go to now, Mr. Beecher?
Mr. Beecher, yes.
Thank you very much, President Valencia. I do have tonight, and I don't know how to. Sorry about that. My presentation to share with you the independent audit of the Santa Maria Bonita School District for the June 30, 2023 school year. So the audit process is intended to efficiently and effectively gather evidence to support the opinions expressed in the reports included in our district audit. So there's a series of reports that are in here. The auditor doesn't look at every single transaction. They make specific selections and they put those selections through specific procedures. They go to a sample of school sites that are tested for state compliance, mainly attendance. As you know, we earn our revenue based on average daily attendance. So they're really careful to make sure that the school district is tracking that data accurately. I also look at associated student body, ASB funds at our junior high schools. District office is visited prior to August for preliminary compliance and procedural testing. And then they come back again after we've presented the board with the unaudited actuals in September to actually audit the balances and the transactions of the school district. And then in a normal year, a significant amount of this work is done remotely, and we share data through a portal for all of the things. And back in the day, we used to prepare paper for them, and they would all come and be in one of our rooms, and the binder was literally this thick with 8.5 by 11 paper. And Brian would keep a binder like that in his office, and the auditors would have a binder to pull stuff from. And they'd come up and ask for something that was missing, and he'd go to his binder that was an exact copy and make them a new copy. Now it's all in the portal, and it's much more efficient, much more effective. There are several separate reports, and I want to make sure and highlight them for you. The independent auditors report, that's on page 1. That's like the main opinion where the auditor concludes that our financial statements are in compliance with GAAP in all material respects. They do an independent audit report on internal control over financial reporting, other matters. This is where they're really getting granular about the district's procedures and our ability to comply with the requirements of being a school district. That report is on page 92. The independent auditors report on compliance with each major federal program and the report on internal control over compliance. That is on page 94. That takes a lot of work. That's the one where they're really digging into detailed transactions and making sure that the way we say we do our business so that our financial statements are accurate is actually the way that we do our business. And the independent auditors report on state compliance is on page 97. That's where they're looking at attendance, they're looking at ASB, they're looking at state-specific programs so that the state's auditor doesn't have to, right? Districts hire and select that person, and they do that audit on behalf of the state. There are multiple sections where our financial statements are available. And again, this isn't something that just anybody can dig into and understand. That's not the purpose of the report. The purpose of these reports is for the informed user, a person who needs to make decisions about the school district can look at these financial statements and really make sense of our financial condition. So the government-wide financial statements are on page 14 and 15. The government fund statements are on 16 through 20. Proprietary funds, those are called proprietary funds, but really what that means is they do their business like an actual business. And so they measure the financial statements that way. That's on page 22 through 24. Fiduciary funds, those are funds that we're entrusted to account for. Generally, that's our ASB funds. And those are on page 25 through 26. The footnotes to the financial statements, I know you'll find this hard to believe. This is the most interesting part of the audit report. It really is. I don't know if you read your notes to the financial statements, but it really does in detail tell the story of the district's financial condition. Each of the major accumulations of transactions are summarized in there. The summary financial statements are important, but the notes really do tell the story. I read them. The auditors do a great job. If you haven't gotten to it yet, they're good. They're meet the requirements, and they tell the right story. And then there's supplemental information in the back, pages 68 through 76. I'm sorry, those are the required supplementary information. And then there's supplemental information we also include, but it's not required, 78 through 90. So that's kind of a walkthrough of our financial statements. I know you've had access to the report and have been able to review it, but that's kind of where everything is if you want to flip to it. Some highlights. The district has $500 million in assets across all funds. And so that accounts for all of our school properties with an estimated value, all of the things that the school district owns. It's worth about $500 million. I was really surprised and impressed by that number. I thought I'd bring it to your attention. The district's identified share of employee pension liabilities. It's a new thing that came into financial statements in the last few years. $171 million is assigned to the school district as our responsibility to pay the pension liability for PERS and STIRS. We earned $35 million in federal financial assistance last year, $14 million for food service, and then 21 million in our Ed Services Fund. So that's the Title I migrant funding and COVID-related dollars on the federal side. And we paid down $3 million in our long-term debt based on the underlying repayment schedule. So we didn't pay anything early, we didn't miss any payments, but it paid down our long-term debt by $3 million. So I just wanted to share with you some of the highlights from the financial statements. The report has a section to summarize any findings or question costs, page 102 through 108. And there were no findings or question costs identified in the 2022-23 audit. People summarize that as a clean audit. When you have a clean opinion and you have no findings, you have a clean audit. So that's really good news, important to share with the school board. And then finally, I get to come up here and share this with you for a few minutes. It's important to recognize that the process of getting through an audit isn't about just the stuff that the auditor does when he gets here. There's a lot of work that our staff, our employees do throughout the year to make sure that all of our procedures, as I mentioned, the auditors do detailed, granular testing on compliance. And that happens when people do their jobs the right way and they take the extra steps to make sure that everything gets documented correctly. So I wanted to write down quickly so that I could make sure and get it all included. An important thank you to district staff that do this work that leads to a clean audit like this. Our project clerks, attendance clerks, community liaisons, office managers, site and department administrators, they all play an important part in making a clean audit occur. It has to be a priority. It starts in the boardroom and it finds its way to every leader. It finds its way to every employee. The teams in accounts payable, purchasing, and human resources and plan alignment, they do a lot of work on the front end of our processes. And also in the middle, that leads to a clean audit. They start that work to make sure that things get documented, filed, and then made available when the auditors are here. So we appreciate their hard work. Good processes and procedures lead to good results only when all of us work to follow those procedures and to continuously improve them. And the team that we work with here, they all do that. You'll hear that in the hallways when people talk about the work they need to do and the way they need to document it. They talk about how the auditors are going to come and ask that question. And so I need to make sure this happens. And we appreciate their diligence. And this report, clean report, is a result of their diligence. So that, I believe, is my final comment, and I'm available for your questions. And then these are just some links if you happen to be in the presentation that you could find these reports. And then if you're reading it, that's the link to where we have all of these reports on our website. Any questions?
Board members, are there any questions or comments? Mr. Hollinshead?
Just one comment. Thank you, Matt, and team. Well done.
Thank you, and you're welcome. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments, may I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and recommend that the Board of Education accept the 2022 and 23 audit report for the Santa Maria Bonita School District as presented.
I'll second.
It is moved by Ms. Cabral and seconded by Mr. Hollinshead that the Board of Education accept the 2022-2023 audit report for the Santa Maria Bonita School District as presented. Roll call.
Mr. Hollinshead.
Aye.
Mr. Lara.
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero. Mr. Valencia.
Aye. Motion passes. Item B, Resolution 23-14, Black History Month. Dr. McDuffie.
Thank you, President Valencia. Black History Month is celebrated throughout the month of February to honor and celebrate the contribution and sacrifices of thousands of African Americans who contributed to shaping the nation and its rich culture, heritage, triumphs, and adversities that are part of our country's history. To commemorate Black History Month, the Board of Education is asked to review and consider adoption of the attached resolution.
Are there any questions or comments from the board prior to our reading the resolution aloud together? Mr. Hollinshead.
Yeah, and just a brief comment, I think with this being in juxtaposition with the celebration for Dr. King this week, and Dr. McDuffie's reading on Sunday, the community's coming out and supporting that. I think we as a board should be also reminding folks of our responsibility in educating our students and really walking the walk with these resolutions and with Black History Month and looking at our curricular offerings and the things that we talk about. The folks that are listed in part of this resolution are activists that are very well known, but there's a lot of history that goes unknown and untalked about or not talked about. And I know, at least one particular example of the Greenwood region of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the massacres that happened there in the early 20th century was part of history that I wasn't aware of until seeing it brought to light in a television program. And there are things like that that are really a real strong part of our history that I think we need to pay attention to. And so examples of folks that kids can relate to and see it throughout history. There was a rapper in the late 80s, early 90s, Chris Parker, KRS-One, who had a song called "You Must Learn," and if you want to listen to it, I would, because it's really good. Boogie Down Productions. But and the reason I mention it is because he makes it implicit that kids, and especially where he was from in New York City and Brooklyn, that they learn about who they are and who the people in their community have been and continue to be. And so if you want to see a lot of really names that you may or may not already know, listen to that song. But I think we need to bring those people up and bring them forward, not just say a resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Hollinshead. Any of the other questions or comments from the board? On my behalf, I also would like to add, I appreciate your comment, Mr. Hollinshead, because I was also thinking along those lines as I was reading the resolution. How do we live this work, right? How do we convert this from some nice language on a page into wonderful and inspiring curriculum, guest speakers, right? And extracurricular opportunities for our students. So I also in the best way possible challenge us, right, as a district on how we could do that. And so one of the things that I was discussing with Dr. McDuffie is almost like, hey, what are school sites doing? It's awesome because we're doing this resolution before the month of February, right, which gives hopefully our staff and our teachers some time to think of ways that we've done things in the past, and also to have some new and creative ways to do things also. So one of the questions that this also raised for me is, how much of our curriculum is reflective of Black and Latino, Native American, Asian Americans, not just in the periods where they're designated, but throughout the year. So I would also appreciate some information from our staff, and so that our community is also aware, right, of how are we living the work.
We'll do some follow-up with that.
Thank you. So unless there's any other questions or comments, I now invite my board colleagues to read the Black History Month resolution. And if we can begin with you, Mr. Hollinshead, and work our way this way, unless you all have another format suggestion. Well, there's 14 paragraphs. So I was thinking we just kind of go down the line paragraph by paragraph. Otherwise, we're going to it won't be kind of an even number. So do y'all just want to do 2, 2, and 2? Sure, we can do 3. Yeah, let's do 3. Thank you very much.
Makes it easier for my simple mind. Whereas February has been designated Black History Month by various official bodies and is celebrated as such in schools, businesses, and government agencies throughout the nation, And whereas Black History Month is celebrated throughout the month to honor and celebrate the contribution and sacrifices of thousands of African Americans who have contributed to shaping this nation and its rich culture, heritage, triumphs, and adversities that are part of our country's history. Whereas the month of February is dedicated to recognizing the meaningful impact that individuals of African descent have made to enrich American culture, expand democracy, strengthen families, and make a better society for all.
Whereas the origins of Black History Month begins in 1915, half a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States, and when historian Carter G. Woodson and Minister Jesse E. Moreland founded the Association for Study of Negro Life and History, an organization dedicated to researching and promoting achievements by Black Americans and other people of African descent. And whereas since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month, also known as African American History Month. And whereas in 1976, when the President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month, he urged Americans to honor the accomplishments of Black Americans, including the contributions and legacies of activists and civil rights pioneers such as, but not limited to, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Rosa Parks. And
whereas this year's Black History Month theme, African Americans and the Arts, which spans the many impacts Black Americans have had on visual arts, music, cultural movements, and more. Whereas the Santa Maria Bonita School District recognizes that each student needs an opportunity to understand the common humanity underlying all people, to develop pride in his or her own identity and heritage, and to understand, respect, and accept the identity and heritage of others. And whereas the Santa Maria Bonita School District further recognizes and celebrates the value of diversity and the richness of cultural heritage within the city of Santa Maria and within the district, and the integral part each of our many communities plays in the overall fabric of our history as well. And
whereas this observance permits society to re-examine its role in preserving the civil rights of all citizens, and whereas Santa Maria Bonita School District affirms its commitment to appreciating, celebrating, and valuing its African American students, and recognizes the importance of acknowledging the history, culture, and struggles of our African American community.
Whereas the History and Social Science Framework for California Public Schools, kindergarten through grade 12, states that the history curriculum of community, state, region, nation, and world reflect the experiences of men, women, and of different racial, religious, and ethnic groups, and must be integrated at every level. Therefore, be it resolved that the governing board of the Santa Maria Bonita School District, that February be designated as Black History Month. Passed and adopted this 17th day of January 2024. And we will now take or actually prior to our vote, I really appreciated having the opportunity to read that last whereas clause where it states that we must reflect the experiences of men, women of different racial, religious, ethnic groups, and must be integrated at every level. So this is not just something that we do on February. This is something that we do, throughout the year. But I appreciate the opportunity that this month gives us to be very extra reflective during this time. So my question to our district is, how do we know, right, we are doing this with fidelity? And if we are not at this point yet, how can we get there? So unless there's any further questions or comments from the board, we can, may I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and recommend that the Board of Education adopt Resolution 2314, Black History Month as presented.
I'll second.
It is moved by Ms. Cabral and seconded by Mr. Lara that the Board of Education adopt Resolution 23-14, Black History Month as presented. Roll call.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia.
Aye. Motion passes. Item C, Resolution 23-15, resolution authorizing Bonita Municipal Water Supply Financing.
Mr. Valencia, we have a public comment for this action item. Mr. Armenta?
Again, my honorable Chairman, Valencia.
Could you
Ready?
please?
Yeah, I make a simple request again that I'm sitting here and I know this is my first time at the meeting, but I imagine there's many that come in here and we don't have the slightest idea. You guys just do the quick slideshow and you guys talk and there's nothing to read. So you're the chair, you have that discretion. You don't need permission from your other board members. All you have to do is give a directive to your superintendent. Your superintendent will get to his secretary and you'll put out a binder out there. So I can read exactly what you guys are doing. I mean, it might help if you guys are going to consider trying to get a bond pass of having something out there for us to educate ourselves. So we can see exactly what you're doing and we can read it instead of a quick slideshow. It's your call. You can do it. You don't need any permission from anybody. As a chair, you have that authority. All you got to do is give a directive to your superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll come back to the item. Item C, Resolution 23-15, resolution authorizing Bonita Municipal Water Supply Financing.
Mr. Beecher?
Good evening, school board. Javier Cavazos, our coordinator for facilities, maintenance and operations transportation. I will be sharing the bulk of this item with you tonight. But again, I thank you for giving us time on this agenda. Very important project that we're investigating and something that I think is a critical, important, long-term investment of our time and energy. And I am grateful that Javier has joined our team with the experience that he brings to the table as far as being through this process, being around this process has really made it possible for us to dive in and get to this point. It's been a while. I was reading some of the documentation that I have on it, and it goes back to 2019. And now we're really heading down the road. And so thank you, Javier. Thank you to the team that's supporting you. I'm really grateful we're here at this point to bring this item to the school board.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, board, Superintendent Dr. McDuffie, cabinet, and Santa Maria families. This evening, I'm going to be providing a very brief update on the progress that we've made to bring clean drinking water that is a long-term solution for Bonita Elementary School. So like Matt said, this project started well over a year ago when we were exploring options to identify long-term solutions for water quality issues at Bonita Elementary. These water quality issues stem from nitrates in the well water. So what we did around that time, we had submitted to the State Water Board for technical assistance to help us identify long-term solutions that could lead to actual action. We were lucky to find a funding source by the State Water Board through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund that paired us with some great partners who have worked with districts similar to ours in addressing issues like this. That process has led us to where we currently are now. And what we've done is we've identified the best solution moving forward, which is consolidation with the city of Santa Maria by extending municipal water service to Bonita Elementary School. The current project that is being designed now that will be submitted to the state for review and approval consists primarily of installation of 1.5 miles of a 2-inch water service line that will go from a point of connection with the city to Bonita Elementary School. This project will also allow us to address the issues with lead infrastructure in the kindergarten building. We will replace those lead lines with non-lead plumbing. So what you're seeing right now is an aerial view of the project. You can see that we are looking to tie into the city water at Black Road, nearby their water treatment plant. From that location, we will run north on Black Road, cross Highway 166, and then from there run west on the north shoulder of Main Street to Bonita Elementary School, where we will connect to existing water utilities. And the project or the schedule that I'm sharing with you now is a schedule that is around 2.5 years. We are currently in the design and environmental phase of planning for this project. We hope to submit or complete this scope of work by May of this year. The next phase after that would be for us to assemble our package and submit it to the state for review and approval. We hope that that process on the state side takes no longer than 9 months, at which end we hope to get approval. The project right now is estimated to cost $2.3 million that we're looking to get fully funded by state funds. Once approved, we hope to proceed on to the bid phase and then proceed on with construction. Right now, we're hoping for construction to start in 2025 and then complete it sometime before April of 2026. With that, that completes the update on the work that we've been doing to provide clean drinking water for Bonita. Welcome any questions.
Board members, what questions might you have? Mr. Lara?
Now, this is that new state water line that you guys will be tapping into, right? Or is this the city?
It's the city. So the city
But
has.
it's the state water line that was put in that the city's tapped, right? Is that am I right? The
So
project that happened quite a few years back, it went through my ranch and there was that state water line. Is that the same one?
No, we're not going to be tying into that water
Okay.
line. The city has actually put out a bid that they're looking to go in or begin construction soon. That's going to extend water to their wastewater treatment plant. And that's the point of connection on Black Road.
Yeah. I know what you're talking-
That will make the
Okay. No,
tie-in.
I was wondering. Thank you.
Ms. Cordero?
So with the completion of this project, we will be assured of not having additional water issues at Bonita in terms of it being okay for people, students, staff, anybody to drink.
Correct. It's
Okay.
going to be the same water that we have here in the city. All we're doing is just extending those services to Bonita Elementary.
And are we dependent on state approval for this?
Yes,
And
well.
if so, what if they don't approve it?
We've been working with the state hand in hand through this process. This is a project that they love to fund, a project that they stand behind and support. At this point, it looks favorable for us to achieve the funding with the state. If we didn't, we would look at other options.
Okay.
Matt?
It's good to
And-
know that there has been, the groundwork has been laid with the state. Thank
Right.
you.
And I wanted to just follow up with those options. I mean, we've been providing safe drinking water to students at Bonita and staff the entire time. We've used different methods to deliver that safe drinking water. We've treated the water, we've bottled water, we've gone back to treated water, and we've gone back to bottled water. And so we would continue to pursue those options. But at this time, we're providing bottled drinking water. We are doing reverse osmosis in the cafeteria. We have reverse osmosis in the cafeteria, so there's water for washing dishes and preparing food. That's easier to access than bottled water. And so we would likely continue that process until we did receive state approval to pursue the more permanent, even if it's costly, because right now we're taking, actually previously we were taking water out of the ground, treating it and providing it to students. So the only cost we had was the treatment cost. We'll be providing a metered water cost after that to the city. But to have a permanent solution that's reliable forever and doesn't fluctuate like nitrate levels can't fluctuate based on the availability of water from the supplier. It is a really important permanent solution. I'm excited to continue to pursue it and to ask for your authorization, or I should say the acknowledgement that we're authorized to pursue this further with the state.
Are there any further questions or comments from the board? I appreciate hearing about what we're currently doing to ensure that folks at the Bonita Elementary School are getting access to safe drinking water, because I would imagine that would be a major concern, or people might be freaked out hearing this. But, I appreciate the efforts that you all are doing to make sure that they're getting that now and then that they'll get that in the future. Seeing no further questions or comments, may I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that the Board of Education adopt resolution 23-15 authorizing Bonita Municipal Water Supply financing as presented.
And I'll second.
It is moved by Mr. Lara and seconded by Ms. Cordero that the Board of Education adopt resolution 23-15, resolution authorizing Bonita Municipal Water Supply financing as presented. Roll call.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Lara, Ms. Cabral, Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia.
Aye. Motion passes. Let me start again. Item D, approval of the new Santa Maria Bonita School District logo. Dr. McDuffie.
Thank you, President Valencia. Board members, good evening. I am thrilled to be in front of you today to present the SMBSD logo and tagline. This process has been formally got underway in August, but informally there have been discussions. And I don't know if you noticed, but Mr. Cavazos had a map with the old logo on there in color. It's the first time I've seen that logo in living color. Today, I will take you through the story. We'll talk about the steps, the process that we went through to determine our new logo, the summary of the survey, reveal our logo and tagline, and talk about the impact and next steps. So, what's the story? As you can see here, when I first arrived a year and a half ago here at Santa Maria Bonita, it was clear that there was a sort of a logo identity crisis. When I did my research for this district before arriving, hopped on the website, and the most recent logo that you see there was the logo that I saw. Never really thought much about it outside of that. When I arrived to my office for the first time, right outside my office was this big round logo, which is the older logo that you see here. And I got just a bit confused as to which logo was the actual logo. I initially thought that actually the blocks or the books that they're reading were actual blocks, building blocks. So I then went to visit school sites, and I saw that some trucks and some of our vehicles had the newer logo, while other vehicles had the more older logo, kind of faded. And again, inquired about them. When I thought about who we are as a school district, I really wanted to wait until we had an identity before even looking at creating a logo for the school district. And so once we solidified our strategic plan, we began talking just about that. So to give you some reference to this, and Matt Beecher, sorry, Bishop, your name blank, but you also talked about the beliefs, our mission statement, our parameters. And here, I'm just going to start off with our beliefs to put those on the board for you to remind you of the words and really the story that this logo and tagline will tell. And some of the beliefs, we believe service is an act of love. We believe that there's strength in the power of cultural diversity. We believe all people belong and have a voice and can contribute. So those are a few of the beliefs that we have within our strategic plan. And then we have our mission statement. The mission of Santa Maria Bonita School District as a unifying force that cultivates and enriches our diverse community is to ensure every student flourishes by discovering their passion and purpose, exercising self-determination, and developing the skills to reach their maximum potential through a student-centered culture. And so, as we go through the process, we actually had, and before we go through that, I just want to thank Dr. Humphrey. Sam, are you here? Thank you, sir, for your work in facilitating logistics of this process. It was not an easy process to go through, and coordinating meetings between different educational partners and CEL. I really appreciate the work that you did on this. But the process involved collaborating with the team from CEL group, and input was gathered from district staff, from site visits, and the SMBSD strategic planning document. CEL designers collected the data and created several logo concepts based on the feedback. And then we engaged the SMBSD community to elicit feedback through our student leaders, our strategic planning teams, and district and site administrators to further refine the concepts. And finally, we put out 2 concepts to our SMBSD community right before winter break for them to really give us feedback on their the logo that really reflects, that they feel really reflects SMBSD. And right after, so last week, gathering all of this data, I thank Mr. Brian Rickey for doing that and really taking charge of that process. But we had them also, so we put the survey out twice to our community as well. And this is just a timeline of that, starting August 29th with our core leadership team, our student leaders in October, strategic planning team, which included certificated classified staff, as well as administration, families, community members, and board members, or board member at that point. Again, you see in December and January, community online survey and a video was presented to our community. So I'm going to have Mr. Rickey come up and talk a little bit about the survey summary that we have.
Thank you. So, you know, a really great job was done by Dr. Humphrey and Dr. McDuffie to reach out to as many people as we could, but obviously you can't get everyone in the room. And so we leaned on some of our online tools. And so Dr. McDuffie, and along with the CLR group, put together a really nice video that described what the logos were about and how it tied in to our mission statement. And that was made available to all of our staff and families via Parent Square. We pushed that out 2 times. So that's, we sent that out to about 22,000 email addresses and phone numbers, right? So it's as broad as we can possibly go. And of course, it was also on the front page. So you may have seen that right before Christmas break. And again, we shared all that information again when everybody came back from winter break. And just to give everybody the opportunity to reflect and share what they thought. And so along with that was a survey. We had over 200 folks who responded to the survey, and there was about a favoritism of about 75% to the logo you're going to see this evening to about the other 24%. So it was pretty clear that one was favored over the other. And, we got some great feedback about, that yes, this work represents us as a district. It's inspirational. It reflects the community. And it pairs really well with the tagline. And that's something we haven't had in the past. It's like this tagline that ties to our mission. And that's another nice piece that we'll be able to use in lots of different ways. And I get to come back and chat with you a little more about how we'll be using it in the near future.
And I just want to say that the survey, we have a couple of lines in there as far as how people like the logo, but we also had people with very strong opinions about keeping the logo that we have now, or why are we changing the logo, and all of the different feedback. But we thought we'd just leave it to 2 comments for this presentation. But I just want to be transparent with that in regards to presenting this. I know that there are different opinions about how we could have gone through the process. I just want to make sure that I'm being transparent with all of you when I present this, that it wasn't something that was just easy and everybody loved what we were doing. So just to go through the process, I think was a good way to really try and get as many people involved as possible. So here we have the Santa Maria Bonita School District logo with the tagline, Cultivating Bright Futures. And this new logo is a visual representation of our shared values and aspirations, reflecting the spirit of cultivating bright futures that defines our intent. At the flag's upper right, if I press it, there we go. At the uppermost part is a gold color simplified open book that symbolizes our primary purpose in creating a supportive learning environment. The left side, we have the flag in blue. Beneath the open shape, you'll find the acronym SMBSD. For Santa Maria Bonita School District. It's recognized as SMBSD. People say SMBSD more so than they say Santa Maria Bonita School District. And this flag can stand on its own without the words or full spelling and tagline, and people still know who we are. In the green section of the flag, the lower right-hand corner symbolizes the district's scenic landscape of the agriculture and mountains, reflecting the city's connection to the beautiful landscape that we have here in Santa Maria. This also symbolizes the cultivating nature of Santa Maria, of not only nurturing potential, but also assisting each student ascending towards his or her aspirations. And then finally, we have the red section, the hand and the heart, symbolizing the nurturing and loving environment we have for our students. It symbolizes the commitment and support of our students as we lift them up to their full potential. This year, we've talked about SMBSD love. We have that within the beliefs of our strategic plan and symbolized in our logo. And so next we have our tagline, Cultivating Bright Futures, or Cultivando Futuros Brillantes. I'll work on it. And we started with a slightly longer tagline than Cultivating Bright Futures, was Empowering Dreams, Cultivating Futures. And one of the things we heard from groups was a desire to keep it simple and memorable with fewer words, easier to say. And we arrived at Cultivating Bright Futures after this process of input and feedback. And you will notice that this is also tied to our mission. And in our mission, we talk about SMBSD as a unifying force that cultivate and enriches our diverse community. And so it really is something that captures the district's commitment to nurturing and supporting student potential. Just further, we talk about these key messages. Again, inspiring dreams. Together, we do this as a community. Inspiring dreams, learning with competence, and creating limitless possibilities. And so I'll have Mr. Ricky talk about impact and next steps.
So this transition from two logos to one is going to take us a little while, of course. And so some of the first places you'll be seeing the new logo will be on the website. And so that's just a prototype of what our website might look like with the new color scheme and the new logo in place. Of course, we've got some vehicles out there that we need to make look similar. Social media, right? We want to make sure that we're out there in the same way so that that brand recognition can kick in and people can grow new memories with the new logo. Letterheads, business cards, all of those things will be coming to staff soon. One of the things I'm really excited about, and again, we really appreciate the partnership we had with the CL group, is they're providing us great tools that we're going to be able to share with staff. And we'll have a branding page available to all staff that will give them access to all these as resources. So they don't have to go and create these things. They'll be readily available to staff in all the formats that they need them in. And we'll have that probably within the next month or so. And so this total transition is going to take a few months, but by the beginning of the new school year, we'll be 100% into the new logo.
And so I want to, as we look at our logo and our tagline, I want to thank cabinet members, our extended cabinet, our leaders here for their input and involvement. Maggie White, thank you for your involvement in taking around and really being liaison for the CEL group. Dr. Schiffer, I want to thank you for your perspective in getting translations together and providing us with that needed help for getting this project going. So thank you all for all your participation. And let me see if I have anything else on my presentation notes. Already said it. So I want to thank again Brian, Ricky, and Sasha Hernandez, our digital media specialists, for their work in really propelling this logo. We have a larger one we want to show you in just a minute, but I will stop for any questions or comments.
Board members, any questions or comments from you all? Dr. McDuffie, something that I've been curious about is, and this just occurred to me now, although I've thought about it before, is we have a dash in between the Santa Maria and the Bonita School District. Any idea why that is, or like, does it need to be there? Is it kind of, do you know the history behind that?
English, in regards to the fact that they are together, is Santa Maria Bonita. It is not Santa Maria Bonita, so we bring them together. So that's.
I feel like I'm in my classroom right now.
Everybody's
like, "Pick me, teacher, pick me."
Two different districts.
It was two different. Yes, so you
Okay,
don't have to call them.
well,
I
I
don't
see
have to call
Maggie
them.
with her hand up. When the unification occurred between the Santa Maria Elementary School District and the Bonita School District, a significant factor in making that happen was that Bonita needed to continue to be part of the name of our district.
Mhm.
So the hyphenation simply signifies that there's Santa Maria and there was Bonita. And so this is how it came to be, and probably into perpetuity.
Right. So President Valencia, you got the official historian look at Santa Maria Bonita. With any, and I think English wise, that when you put two things together, you need to put a hyphen, are they, right? Am I? Have I?
It's like the hyphenated last name.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna, Mr. President Valencia, any other questions other than that one?
Thank you. Yeah, some comments regarding our logo is that at first I was a little bit undecided myself between the two, and the one with the heart, I hadn't seen like a school district have like a heart type of logo. And so that really kind of made me think a lot about the work that we do. And ultimately, I think I ended up erring on the side of the heart logo because it's being really explicit about the work that we do. And I've heard the expression that what we do is hard work and what we do is heart work. And I think those two definitely, I think our logo kind of does do a good job of representing that. And I've also heard an expression before about like something along the lines of like, when you know our community, like you'll love us. If you don't love Santa Maria, something's wrong with you, because this place has lots to love. Yes, we have our challenges, but we have so many assets and so much beauty here. It's ridiculous. And our students are a big part of what makes that the case, our staff. And so that's what makes me excited about this new logo, regardless of the fact that maybe not everybody was 100% into it. That's okay, because there's future opportunities, right, to engage in this process. But we have relatively new board members here. We have lots of new staff, right? This is an awesome opportunity for us to, like you said, figure out who we are, what is our identity. And it looks like, our staff, our families, our students believe that they want bright futures, right, for our young people. So I'm really excited for the colors and for the work that we're going to be doing with this new logo. So seeing no further questions or comments, may I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that the Board of Education approve the new SMBSD logo as presented.
No second.
It is moved by Mr. Lara and seconded by Ms. Cabral that the Board of Education approve the new SMBSD logo as presented. Roll call.
Mr. Hollenshead,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero, Mr. Valencia.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, President Valencia. If you'll just indulge me a minute, I do have a poster size likeness of our logo, and I would love to have that be posted here in the middle of the boardroom with board members to take a picture.
An example of, as President Valencia mentioned, the hard work, but the heart work that is happening here in San Bernardino. So the update will be on our expanded learning programs. As many of you guys are aware, you were here. I wasn't here at that time, but last spring, we had an RFP where we awarded 3 separate contracts to some of our community partners. And we are here tonight to provide you with update of how things are going, sharing some of our successes and challenges that we may have encountered and some of our next steps. So I would like to welcome Lori Grock up to this podium. Thank you.
Good evening. So as Ms. Lo Chong-View said, I am here to present the update on the after-school programs. So we begin this conversation with a hearkening back to the funding that really led to our work on the RFP and the redistribution of the contracts for the after-school programs. So expanded learning opportunities, the expanded learning opportunity funding was defined by the state legislature to mean before school, after school, summer or intersession learning programs that focus on developing the academic, social, emotional, and physical needs and interests of students through hands-on engaging learning experiences. What we saw as critical in this new funding stream was that it was the intent of the legislature that expanded learning programs would be pupil-centered, results-driven, include community partners, and complement but not replicate learning activities in the regular school day and year. And so with that in mind, we wrote the request for proposals or RFP in order to seek a higher level of programming that was more student-centered and involved our community partners. Quick facts about this funding stream. These are the requirements in order to meet eligibility for state funding. We have to offer after-school programs every regular school day. The day needs to be equal to at least 9 hours. So that includes the 6.5-hour student day and then any before school or after school programming that you provide. So our partners are working with us to create that 9-hour day. It also has to be offered at least 30 non-school days. So that's summer school, winter intersession, spring break, Thanksgiving break. Altogether, that needs to total at least 30 days, and each of those 30 days must also be 9 hours or longer. And attendance has to be based on the individual needs of students and families. So those of you who are familiar with our previous iteration of after-school programs, which was our ACES programs, that program was a grant-funded program that was not based on needs of students or families. That was based on consistent attendance. So there was a 15-hour a week requirement for students, which meant that even if the parent only needed after-school care until 4 o'clock, they still had to stay until 5:15. Even if the parent only needed after-school care Mondays and Wednesdays, they had to come Monday through Friday or they would lose their seat. So it was a really pivotal change in the way that we designed programs, because we started designing our programs based on what our parents and our students needed and wanted, and not what our grant or our previous grant required. Every program, every day is required to include a literacy element and an enrichment element. Snacks and meals must be provided. No student in our district can be charged a fee, and the program plans are required and considered living documents for every site. So based on all those quick facts and this new funding stream, this was kind of our timeline for after-school programs. In 2020, 2021, we had ACES, the grant, and we supplemented that grant with LCFF and LCAP funding. So what we found was that the ACES grant awarded up to 88 seats at each of our sites, and we had sites that had far more than 88 students who needed after-school care. And so we started to supplement the ACES grant funding with LCFF and LCAP money. In 21-22, the first allocation of ELOP funding came through, and we started to combine that as well. Then in 22-23, last year, we received the full ELOP allocation, and we moved to ELOP funding with ACES only being renewed for the junior high sites. So we currently fund our after-school program at the junior highs with the ACES grant and all of our 17 elementaries with the ELOP. That brings us to this year, where we have seen an explosion of services, a really impactful and satisfying increase in services for our families and students. We have off-site partners for after-school program, not just for non-school days. We have non-school day contracts at 5 different locations in the city, and we have seen a great increase in the value-added point of service and programmatic components. So when we wrote the RFP, we required that the submissions include demonstrating how they would meet these expectations: a safe environment, a supportive environment, active and engaged learning, challenging content, healthy snacks, meals, activities, and a process for continuing quality improvement. So I am happy to report to you tonight that we have seen a really solid increase in our enrollment numbers for after-school programs. So you'll recall that in the fall of 2022, when we wrote the request for proposals, we asked our partners to dream big, give us a program that would give students a place to feel safe, supported, healthy, engaged, and challenged, and would be a place that they wanted to attend. In the spring of 2023, we awarded the bids to the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, and the People's Self-Help Housing. The YMCA was awarded groups 1 through 4, which encompass our 17 elementary after-school programs on site. They were also awarded group 5 for our 4 junior high ACES sites. The Boys and Girls Club was awarded group 6 offsite programs for both their Railroad and Evans Park locations. And the People's Self-Help Housing was awarded group 6 for their offsite programming at Los Adobes de Maria II housing complex, which is available to any SMBSD resident student, traditionally and primarily including Bonita and Liberty students. We've been absolutely thrilled with all 3 of our partners this year. The Boys and Girls Club is serving on average 116 Santa Maria Bonita School District students per day at their Railroad and Evans Park locations. The People's Self-Help Housing is serving around 34 students per day. And overall, the collaboration with all 3 of our partners has allowed us to continue to work toward our commitment of after school for all. One of the biggest increases in enrollment at both our offsite programs for the Boys and Girls Club and our onsite ASP programs has been the ability for full day TK and kindergarten students to enroll in after-school programs. When they were enrolled in a half-day program, they were not eligible for after-school programs. So we're excited to be able to offer our parents that programming as well. So you can see here from the numbers, our average attendance from October to November of this year, and then our average enrollment from October to December of this year, and then the change in enrollment numbers from December of last year to December of this year. We've had some wonderful increases. We also always seek to find whether what we're doing is being well received. And so we have done a family survey. One of the questions that we asked was, how much does the after school program help your child stay safe and out of trouble? And you can see that overwhelmingly our parents are feeling like it's a good thing to have our students, their children, have a safe place to go. So we're super happy with those results. They are also really leaning into the flexibility of programming that we've been allowed to offer this year that wasn't available in the past. They love the program. They love the results of the program. The children love to be in the program. So we've really received positive feedback. But we also know that there's always room for improvement. So when we seek through our continuous quality improvement process to find ways to iterate this program to become even more meaningful for our parents and our students, what we have found is that a lot of our parents want a fourth rotation for homework. So currently we do 3 rotations a day: academic support, which is academic investigation of core subjects. It's not tutoring or like help with homework. It's actually academic support to grow their skills, enrichment and physical activity. And then students have kind of a choose your own adventure time for homework. But a lot of our parents are indicating to us in this survey that they might like more time for homework. So we're working with our partners on what that might look like in the future. So if you think of a classic RFP or any design model, we know that design has to be informed by evidence and practitioner experience. We work through the stages of planning, designing, building, testing, reflecting, and then iterating. And so what we're here tonight to tell you is we are really, really happy reflecting on August to December of this year. We are very, very pleased with all 3 of our partners and all of the contracts that we've awarded. And so any iterations that we do, we would hope would be fine-tuned to areas like how do we make the program grow, and how do we make it even more meaningful to our parents and students, rather than starting the process over. And that is my presentation.
Board members, what questions or comments might you have? Ms. Cordero?
I don't have a question. I just am really, really pleased to hear that everything has been this successful. I think I'm a little bit surprised that doing homework wasn't included in one of those rotations. I think as a parent, I would probably sort of be expecting that also. Because if kids are here for 9 hours plus, and then, it's time to go home and have dinner, and assuming they go to bed at a reasonable time, they're probably pretty tired. So including homework in that rotation, I think would be very appropriate.
Thank you for that feedback.
One of my questions is, do we know if these different folks in the YMCA or Boys and Girls Club, or the folks that are offering these services, do they use research-based practices to inform the programming that they do? Do you know anything about that?
They do, actually. We work in partnership with them. So we have 2 program specialists for after-school programs who work with the staff. We ensure that the programs they use are programs that are supplemental approved by SMBSD. So they've been vetted. The research has been checked to make sure that they have in What Works Clearinghouse or Ed Reports that they've been proven to be efficacious with our students. And then we help them to implement it appropriately and with fidelity. So yes, absolutely. They are using evidence-based practices.
Excellent. And then what, if any, are the barriers to more enrollment in these after-school programs? Because I really appreciated hearing that the goal is after school for all, because I think all of our young people would benefit from these programs. And so what barriers, if any, exist to that enrollment for them?
I think one of the biggest barriers for us this year has been really rewriting the script in parents' minds about ACES. We had a lot of educating to do about the fact that the 5 days a week and 15 hours a week is no longer required for our elementary students to qualify. So we heard a lot of parents who would say kind of off the cuff remarks like, oh, I'd love to be in after school, but I only need it Mondays and Tuesdays. And we would go, well, guess what? You don't have to be here all 5 days. Like, you don't have to stay till 6. You don't have to come every day. So I think a lot of it, the barrier this year for us was education. As we move forward, we continually look at what makes a student want to stay. What makes a student be excited about after-school programs? Like, we've really attacked the problem from the child standpoint. We want We want the kid to go home and tell the parent, don't pick me up early. We're doing, rockets today, or, oh, I don't want to miss art. Don't pick me up until after 5 or whatever it is. So we've really worked on that. I think one of our biggest challenges is junior high. It's a hard age, and it's hard to keep them in a sheltered and supervised environment when the alternative is to hang out with their friends and walk to the park. And so we really need to, I think we need to poll our junior high students about what would keep them there, and then really work on creating those opportunities for them that will engage them and make them want to stay.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea of, asking the students, right? What would help you stay, right? Would it be if more of your friends attended? Would it be if the snacks were better? Would it be if there was different programming? So I appreciate that you all are thinking about those things, because one of the things I noticed we don't often do that's simple is ask the students, themselves, right? Like they're the main folks who are here to serve, right? We talk about being student-centered, but yet it's like adults trying to figure out what makes the most sense to them, and we could just ask them, and we might not like what we hear sometimes, right? But it's still, I think, the best source for our information. You had mentioned some quick examples of like art and rockets. What are some other things that some of our students are doing right now in some of these after-school programs?
There's a photography unit that works its way through. We bought digital cameras and we do photography with them. There's an Ozobot unit where the students are learning to code with little mini robots and then get to, have them move around. There's all kinds of visual arts, painting and crafting and those sorts of things. There is STEAM. There's always a STEAM unit that focuses on the math, the art, and the engineering together. So they're building different things. There are healthy choices and cooking classes that we rotate through the site so that the kids get to shop at a farmer's market on campus for produce, and then they get to cook something, a recipe using that produce, and take the recipe home to their family with the raw materials to make it again with their family at home. There's lots. It changes all year long.
That sounds really, really exciting. I know from personal experience, how I definitely benefited from these after-school programs. It gave me a little taste of sports, of community building, and so I know it, for me personally, it worked wonders being a part of that. And so I hope that more of our students continue to take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments from the board, the Board of Education will acknowledge receipt of teaching and learning, supplemental programs, expanded learning programs, update as presented. Item 13, new business. Are there any new business items that the board would like to request for future meetings or other meetings we might have? Ms. Cordero?
I'm not sure if I need to actually make a request for this, but I am hoping that in the near future, we will have a presentation on our testing results and for both LPAC and CSSP, whatever the CAS. I just can't get that acronym down. Anyway, I would like to see those and have some conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Cordero. Any other items from the board? And I appreciate you mentioning that, Ms. Cordero, because I too would like follow up on that data. I've also asked to look at how do we compare to like similar districts. I know it might take a little bit of time to compile that data, but I think having the courageous conversation around if the data, shows that we have lots of areas for growth, which I'm sure we do, like most school districts, what is our goal and how can we have a clear picture as a board of where we're going towards, as well as our staff having that clear picture. So I really appreciate that, because sometimes when we receive these reports, it's like tons of figures, tons of numbers, and it's tough sometimes to just say, okay, so what are our grade level reading scores for second grade, for third grade. So I know for me, that would also help me to see where we're at and how and where we want to go. I think it could motivate hopefully our staff to know that, hey, this is where we're at. We know we don't necessarily want to be there. So how do we get to the next level? So thank you for that, Ms. Cordero. Unless there's any further new business from the board, we'll move on to item 14, board and superintendent reports. Mr. Hollinshead.
Happy New Year.
All right. Short but sweet. Mr. Lara. Ms. Cabral.
Welcome back. Hope everybody had a relaxing break, if you had a break, and Happy New Year.
Well, I know staff and students came back last week, and along with that, the resumption of, meetings. So the first Santa Barbara County School Board Association meeting was last week, and we actually met in person. We met at Hanata Middle School Library, which is in Buellton. And we had good attendance. Since COVID, we've pretty much been doing everything virtually. Last year, we did have an in-person dinner in the spring, but it was really nice to have people together and kind of reconnect and network a little bit. The county is going to be offering job fair opportunities. February 3rd will be South County, Santa Barbara County, February 24th, and these are Saturdays here at Sousa Center, and I believe we did something similar to that last year. The county board had one of their board members pass last November, and so they have since this meeting interviewed and selected their new representative, and we all know her, Mrs. Flores. Of course, the governor has come out with his new budget information, and there have been a couple of opportunities to hear some evaluative comments about that. It still is sounding hopeful. But I did hear that word deferral in a couple of places, so makes me hesitant to be too excited. Hancock has applied for and is getting ready to build some student housing. Actually, I heard that it was in the discussion at the county meeting, and then this morning at the quarterly schools meeting, it was shared that they are in the planning process. It has been approved, so they will hopefully in the relatively near future be able to offer some student housing. Hancock is still receiving awards for the programs that they offer. And of course, I guess officially yesterday was when they submitted their application to the state for their 4-year applied professional studies accreditation. And, fingers crossed, and there's a lot of discussion around community colleges offering 4-year degrees. So I'm hopeful that particularly in this area, we are able to do that. Then this morning, our local district shared, and I think Mr. Hollins had kind of alluded to the fact, and we've kind of already heard that it is most likely that Santa Maria Joint will also be going for a bond measure because of their need for additional space. He also, Superintendent Garcia also talked about a big change that they're making in their math curriculum that will start next year. It will be, instead of offering algebra, geometry, algebra, trigonometry. And number two, they're changing their math requirement from 2 to 3 years. It's the way I understood it, it is going to be a combination of algebra and geometry over those 3 years so that there won't be a gap between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, which sounds very interesting. And I had a few questions about how they did their adoptions and come to find that it's pretty much the same as the way we do it. Orchid is developing a strategic plan. Their gym at Orchid Academy is getting close to being completed. They vacated the Casmalia site and the county is using it as a special ed location for preschoolers. And probably one of the most interesting facts, and this kind of came up in our discussion and sharing of our need for space to accommodate full day transitional kinder and full day kinder was, and I had mentioned in ADUs, and then Mr. Chun from the city, who is the city planner, actually went on to tell us that it's, I believe he said since 2020. Is that what he said? Yeah. 1,200 ADUs have already been built. Another 500 are approved and 300 are in the beginning stages. And as Mr. Beecher very well knows, unless they meet a specific size, we don't collect any builder's fees or anything from them, and the city doesn't collect anything either. So it impacts all of our services, but there's no increase in revenue because of those added bodies that are housed in once was a single family dwelling. So it was a very interesting meeting this morning. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cordero. I want to take a couple of moments to commend our staff. I had the privilege of attending the Migrant Education Conference on December the 16th. And while I was at the event, I had the opportunity to witness our families, our students, enjoying a nice meal, getting some awesome books, as well as other resources. And I heard that one of the guest speakers or the keynotes potentially was Patricia Villalobos, if I'm not mistaken. And I was really excited to hear that because I've had the pleasure of working with Ms. Villalobos, who is an outstanding ethnic and gender studies and Spanish teacher at Rigetti High School. And what she's been able to do, not only with her curriculum and making it inclusive of the cultures of her students, particularly of Latino descent, and for students that are not of those cultures to learn about Latino history and culture, but she also has an organization that she supports. This is a student-run organization called Latinos Unidos. And basically, these young people create workshops for other high school students. So it's high school students becoming teachers, basically, essentially workshop leaders. And different themes like mental health are major topics, or the importance of pursuing higher education. And I heard that at the conference, some of her high school students that have gone on to college actually came to surprise her and visit her at the conference. And so to me, I really commend our staff for finding those many gems in our community, right, that are supporting our students, because I think that type of work is really, really inspiring. I also want to take a moment to thank many of the staff that support that work. I apologize if I leave out some of the names. I know that Eduardo Pantin, the director of Migrant Education Program, was a big part of the event's success, as well as Mariana Lopez, Alejandra Villalpando, Leticia Morales, Consuelo Valencia. I met Consuelo for the first time that day. I believe it was her birthday that day on a Saturday. And so that just goes to show you, right, the commitment of our staff, that even on their birthdays, they're out working to benefit our community. You have Rosa Mondragon, Hector Jimenez, Elizabeth Flores, and of course, Dr. McDuffie as well. So thank you all very much for making that event a big success. I had the opportunity today on my way to work at Santa Maria High School to witness the Healthy School Pantry event at Fair Park. And it is becoming so popular that it's getting hard for our students and our staff to get to work on time. So I reached out to Dr. Castillo Schiffer to say, hey, what can we do to kind of figure that out? Because it creates major congestion in that area, which is really a good problem to have, right? It's that we're so successful with this program that it's overflowing. But it's also, somewhat telling to me, right? It's a sign also of the economic times, right? Many of our families are struggling. And it's really good to see that our district is taking the lead on meeting those needs, right? Those basic needs, because it's really hard to do your work, right? If you're worried about where your next meal is coming from. And so I want to encourage all of our families to take advantage of those services, because I know from personal experience, sometimes our families feel like, oh, no, there's somebody with more needs than I do, that they should be getting it. And, no, we all, pay taxes and, pay into these services so that our communities can take advantage of it, including the communities that benefit from it. So I really commend the staff for being a part of that really important work. I even saw Dr. Castillo Schiffer there, directing traffic and stuff like that. And so I really appreciate that hands-on approach, because when our families meet our staff, right, they're going to approach you more, right? They're going to feel more comfortable, right, with you all. And that's a really important part of building trust. So some of the folks that I want to recognize for that Healthy School Pantry event are the family engagement team. It includes our community liaisons like Aida Hernandez Garcia, Victoria Vences, Maria Hernandez, Benji Alfaro, Susana Pineda, our translators, Cesar Ruiz and Benito Flores, one of our clerks, Maria Cortez, one of our program specialists, Sandra Bravo, and as well as including community partners such as the Santa Barbara County Food Bank, Ellen Hancock College, the California Farm Workers Foundation, the Santa Maria Police Department Community Services Unit, and Family Services Agency Family Outreach Advocates. So thank you again for doing that really hard work and hard work. And I also wanted to thank those folks that are working with creating partnerships with CHC to things like dental screenings. These are, again, things, right? It's really hard to, do your work in class if you got a toothache. And, sometimes our families struggle to afford those services. And I can also really relate to that. And seeing how in my own family, we would sometimes not be able to take care of our bodies or our mental health because we couldn't afford it. So thank you so much to our staff for, again, eliminating more of those barriers, right, that can get in the way of the educational success of our students. And in closing, one of our weekly updates talked about how some of our students from the DLI program are going to be taking the AP Spanish language assessment test, which I did not take until I was a senior in high school. And thankfully, passed it, just passed it, and but I'm really confident that our dual language immersion students are going to do much better than I did, because they are getting the benefit of learning English and Spanish simultaneously academically, right? So I'm really excited to see that. I know that there's a buzz around it at the high school level, because now freshmen are going to be starting the high school level, right, rubbing shoulders with some seniors and some juniors, and might even be better prepared academically than them. So that's what really excites me about the work that we're doing with expanding DLI. That's why I can see why so many of our families are in tears if their kids aren't able to get in, and are in tears advocating for more of our students to take advantage or to be able to take these classes. So thank you very much, everyone, for all your hard work. It's a pleasure to be a part of this work, and I'm excited for the new year and all the good stuff that's to come. Dr. McDuffie.
Thank you, President Valencia. First and foremost, I hope everyone had a restful and rejuvenating winter break. That's what it really is about. Right before winter break, I was a part of the attended part of the district's annual Migrant Family Conference held at El Camino Junior High School. And I don't want to take any of the thanks at all. Mr. Eduardo Pantine, migrant director, and his staff did an outstanding job for that program. So I won't go further because you've already described that. And I just want to thank them. And also, I attended the quarterly schools meeting, and Ms. Cordero, you did an absolute thorough and wonderful job at explaining exactly what occurred there. Was really a good meeting to learn what's going on in the other districts as you described. Also, speaking of strategic planning, this evening, action plans are being prepared for our 4 areas: engaging families in the community to fulfill our mission, recruiting, supporting, and retaining high-quality individuals, providing structures and facilities to facilitate inclusive learning experiences, and nurturing the whole child. Those action team chairs, they actually met today, and they will be presenting their committee's recommendations. I'm sorry, presenting to the, I'm sorry, presenting their committee's recommendations at a meeting January 31st to the original strategic planning development team to really look at phasing in prioritizing those action plans and vetting those. So more to come. Tomorrow night, LCAP Workshop 2024, focus on the work of the strategic plan and the strategies as we go through a new dawning, a new era of the LCAP here in Santa Maria Bonita. And finally, this past Monday, we celebrated the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. On Sunday, I was excited, honored, and privileged to speak at a Martin Luther King celebration hosted by the NAACP in the plaza in front of the Santa Maria Public Library. The program incorporated music and dance, and it was well done. We went over to march over to the Regal Theater, where we then saw The Color Purple, or viewed a screen or the musical Color Purple, and it was really just a wonderful evening. And I spoke and recreated a sermon of the Martin Luther King sermon entitled "The Drum Major Instinct." Spoke really, really was about leaving a legacy for serving others. And in honor of Martin Luther King and Martin Luther King holiday this past week, I leave you with one of his many quotes. Very simple: "Be the peace you wish to see in the world." And with that, I hand it back over to you, President Valencia.
Thank you so much, Dr. McDuffie. I had the pleasure of hearing your rendition of the of that speech by Dr. King, and it was Dr. McDuffie stole the show. At the event, one of the event organizers said, "Dr. McDuffie, like we're gonna invite you back every year, so be ready." So if you haven't had the privilege of hearing Dr. McDuffie's rendition of it, I encourage you all to check that out, because it was definitely, he represented our district very proudly. So thank you for that. Our next regular board meeting of the Santa Maria Bonita School District will be held on February 14th, 2024. There being no further business before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn? It is moved by Ms. Cordero and seconded by Ms. Cabral to adjourn the meeting. The time is now 8:53.